All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring a seriously mind-expanding spiritual concept, the paradox of divine perfection and human imperfection. We're looking at a profound piece of source material called The Polished Jar, Refining the Soul Toward Divine Perfection. It's a text that takes those massive, unanswerable questions of human existence, like why are we here? Why is life such a struggle? What's the actual point of being a good person? And it distills all of that into a really specific, structured progression. If you've ever felt totally overwhelmed by the messy reality of human life, but still kind of sense there's this deeper, perfect purpose underneath it all, well, this explainer is absolutely going to be illuminating for you. So let's get into it. So the source material immediately hits us with a massive cosmic contradiction right out of the gate. The text posits an absolute baseline. Divinity, or God, is fundamentally incapable of being anything other than perfect. But then, it makes this incredibly bold claim that we, humanity, are an extension of that exact same divine source. Basically, we are that divinity. But, obviously, as we all know from just looking around the room or looking in the mirror, we are decidedly not perfect, right? We make mistakes, we stumble, we act selfishly. The source acknowledges this tension right away, stating that we're imperfect simply because we haven't fully expressed that underlying perfection yet. Which naturally leads us to the core existential question, doesn't it? If we possess this inherent perfection, why haven't we fully expressed it? Why are we so flawed? If our core nature is literally divine, why is the human experience filled with so much trial, error, and, well, obvious imperfection? It's a paradox that has literally puzzled philosophers for millennia. But here's the thing. The text doesn't just leave us hanging with this uncomfortable question. Instead, it uses this exact contradiction as a launchpad to explain the actual mechanics of human existence. The source suggests that this gap between our perfect inner nature and our flawed outward reality isn't an accident. It's not a punishment. It's actually the very engine of our spiritual development. Moving into Section 1, the mechanics of virtue, choice versus force. To start untangling this paradox, the text zooms in on the everyday mechanics of human morality. We're zooming out of the grand, cosmic scale of God and perfection down to the nitty-gritty of how you and I make decisions on a random Tuesday afternoon. How do we actually go about expressing that hidden perfection? Well, the text argues that for virtue to genuinely transform us, it absolutely must be freely chosen. Let's look at forced action versus free choice. On one hand, the text explicitly states that forcing yourself to be virtuous is not true virtue. Think about that for a second. If you're only doing the right thing because of social pressure or fear of punishment or just strict rules, you aren't actually changing your inner nature, are you? You're just complying. But on the flip side, we have freely chosen virtue. The author insists that to truly be virtuous, the actions have to be selected with complete free will. Why does this matter so much? Because according to the text, it's only through that specific mechanism of free choice that these virtues actually stick. They literally become a permanent part of your character. It's basically the difference between temporarily wearing a mask of goodness and actually rewriting your own spiritual DNA. Which brings us to Section 2, Lifetimes of Spiritual Growth, the Law of Accumulation. So the crucial point here is what happens once we actually start making these free, virtuous choices over really vast expanses of time. The text suggests that these freely chosen virtues carry forward in both quality and quantity. You see, you aren't starting from scratch every single time. In past lifetimes, according to the source, you've been slowly accumulating these character traits. In your present lifetime, every time you freely choose, say, patience over anger or generosity over greed, you're actively adding to that spiritual bank account. You're increasing both the volume and the depth of your virtue. And this whole process projects forward into all future lives. The text clearly states that this accumulation continues, unbroken, until we finally reach that state of total perfection. It's a hugely expansive view of time, right? Moving way beyond a single human lifespan to talk about spiritual growth on a truly epic scale. Literally nothing is wasted. Every good choice you freely make is permanently recorded in your evolving character. Now for Section 3, the dirty jar metaphor, visualizing the soul. To keep all this from getting too abstract, the author anchors these ideas in a really highly visual, concrete metaphor. We're asked to picture the soul as a beautiful, perfect light trapped inside a very dirty jar. Imagine a light source that is flawless, brilliant, and infinitely powerful. That light represents the divine perfection we talked about at the very beginning, the God that the text says we fundamentally are. But look at the container. The jar surrounding that light is completely coated in thick, opaque grime and dirt. Because of all that accumulated muck, the light just cannot shine through. From the outside, the jar just looks dark, messy, and totally imperfect. It doesn't look like a brilliant light at all. This is the source's extremely powerful visual explanation for our current human condition. The perfection is already inside us, fully intact. It's just merely obscured by the condition of our vessel. Now, a really critical detail here is exactly how the text defines the grime on that glass. The text is very specific, defining this dirt not as something inherently evil, but simply as the ignorance of our true divine nature. And that is a vital distinction in this source material. The text doesn't say the dirt is sin or malice or some fundamental brokenness. No, it's just ignorance. It's simply a lack of awareness. We act imperfectly simply because we've forgotten or maybe haven't yet realized that we contain this perfect light. When we act out of selfishness or fear, it's really just the dirt smudging the glass, preventing the light of our true nature from illuminating our path. I have to say, it's a surprisingly gentle and forgiving way to frame human flaws. So, as we evolve through our choices, the jar gets cleaner and cleaner, incarnation after incarnation, gradually revealing the light within. The text outlines a really clear four-step process here. Step 1, we use our free will to choose virtue. Step 2, every single time we do that, we wipe a little bit of the dirt off the glass. Step 3, this slow, pretty painstaking process of polishing the jar continues across multiple incarnations. It happens bit by bit. It is definitely not an overnight transformation. But finally, step 4, as the dirt of ignorance is scrubbed away by our virtuous choices, our true, perfect nature is revealed. More and more of the light shines through until the glass becomes totally transparent. The process of human life, therefore, is quite literally the process of doing the dishes. We are just washing the grime off our own souls so our true selves can be seen. And that brings us to Section 4, the ultimate cosmic purpose, experiencing perfection. This really brings us to exactly why this entire, sometimes agonizing process of polishing the jar is even necessary. I mean, you might be wondering, why couldn't things just be perfectly clean from the start? Why do we have to go through the messy, slow process of making choices, making mistakes, and accumulating virtue over countless lifetimes? Well, to answer that, the source explains that in an original, formless state, God cannot actually experience his own perfection. The text tells us that God's original state is formless. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Without form, without a vessel, perfection is just a theoretical concept. It can't be actively experienced or expressed. It's kind of like having the concept of music in your head without having an actual instrument to play it on. Therefore, to experience perfection, form is strictly required. And that is exactly where we come in. We are the form. We are the jars. When our jar is perfectly clean, the light of perfection shines unimpeded. We are the necessary instruments that allow the divine to move from theoretical perfection into actual lived experience. The beautiful cosmic payoff here is that once our jar is completely clear, that divine light shines totally unimpeded, allowing God to finally experience his perfection through our refined human form. Just listen to this concluding quote from the text. Allowing God to experience his perfection through us, which he could not do in his original, formless state. This is the ultimate purpose of the entire journey. Every difficult choice, every freely chosen act of virtue, every lifetime of struggling through the dirt and the ignorance, it all has a profound reason. We are essentially building the perfect lens through which the universe can view its own brilliance. Our human struggles aren't just arbitrary tests, They are the literal polishing of the cosmic glass. So I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder from today's explainer. As you go about your life, what daily choices are you making to polish your jar? The source leaves us with such a compelling premise. You don't have to create the light. You don't have to somehow invent perfection. It's already sitting right there inside of you, fully formed and waiting. The only thing you are actually responsible for is the dirt on the glass. So when you look at your habits, your reactions, and the choices you make entirely of your own free will, ask yourself, are these choices adding another layer of grime, or are they wiping the glass clean so your true, brilliant nature can finally shine through? Keep polishing, keep choosing freely, and hey, thank you so much for exploring this fascinating concept with me today.